My name is Carlos Morales. I will be presenting the Wars in the Middle East speech. War, something that has been around since the existence of man. Countless wars, countless battles within those wars, victories, losses, depending on what side of the fence you're on. Allow us to turn back the hands of time, taking us back 19 years to the year of 2001, a year that most Americans will never forget. Many of us, including myself, were only babies when this incident occurred. We are, of course, talking about the unfortunate incident of 9/11, the day that would ultimately resort to the United States waging war on terrorism, a war that we still fight to this day. This means that American troops have been fighting, sacrificing, and dying overseas on foreign soil in order to keep us safe. Basically, ever since I was born. Everybody who is old enough to remember the incident of 9/11 remembers exactly where they were at and what they were doing exactly when they heard about this terrorist act. For many, it was a calling to be the first to serve and the first to defend the Constitution, which led them to joining the armed forces in order to protect our country and its people. I bring you all here today to speak about where the darkest things of what one human can do to another takes place. This place is called war. We, of course, are not talking about any war, however. We're talking about the ongoing war that has currently been plaguing the Middle East with terror and violence. The same war that a lot of us have probably have had some sort of family member either fight or that is currently fighting for us to keep us safe. Nowadays, Americans are still very separated on terms of their political views and moral values. Instead of agreeing to disagree, most people in the US either stand on the far left or they stand on the far right. Very few are smart enough to see that the correct choice is to do what we did when this incident occurred, and that is to meet in the middle. I was not old enough to see it for myself yet, but those who were there speak of how truly great and inspiring it was to see all Americans come forth as one. At that time, it did not matter who you voted for. At that time, it did not matter what where your moral values were aligned, and it did not matter what your political views were. The only thing that mattered at that time was coming together as Americans and saying, we love our country. What are we as Americans going to do about this? This is in fact what weighed such a heavy decision on protecting the nation that we built by leaving our homes and going overseas to where the heart of terrorism lies, and that is the Middle East. The beginning of the war was horrific, to say the least. War itself is a truly horrifying aspect of humans, but going into a completely new environment from which we are not used to is always one of our challenges, one of our greatest challenges. In World War II, it was our troops pushing through urbanized cities in France and Germany in order to hold back and withstand the Axis troops. In Vietnam, our troops had to fight a completely new, different style of war called jungle warfare. They had to worry about dealing with the intense and scorching heat and humidity, but that was the least of their worries on their minds, seeing as they had to worry more about the Vietnamese snipers hiding in trees and kamikaze lying beneath their feet in foxholes within these jungles that they were patrolling. Now we move forward to our current war, and we come across a new type of war. Not just the fact that this war takes place in the desert and can get a little sandy, but also about the fact that our enemies harbor new weapons of mass destruction. War has never been clean or pretty. It has always been dirty and ugly. It is hard to say which war is worse than which, but in my opinion, I would be most concerned of being in this current war, seeing as the enemy likes to use these things we like to call IEDs, or improvised explosive devices, which are basically just handmade bombs that are used by these terrorists, not only used against our American troops, but also used against their own people. I could go on and on about how the disgustingly creative ways that these terrorists use these bombs not only against us, but their own people, and I will only give a few examples to paint a picture. Most know about the countless IEDs that are set on the main roads, which are to target heavy infantry American vehicles that carry American troops. Another way is to strap an IED onto another human being who is either willing to die or mentally incapacitated or mentally handicapped in order to take advantage of them and send them into a crowd of either civilians or American troops. On the bright side of things, after years and years, after countless sacrifices, and after many casualties, the U.S., with the help of our allied troops, are now getting to the point where every year we're having less and less occupied bases in the Middle East and more troops being pulled out. This is, of course, up until what I like to call the Great Scare, because Trump called in a drone strike which killed an Iranian general, which could have potentially started World War III. Thankfully, the Iranian chief said that he does not wish death to America nor death to the American people, but instead wishes death to only Trump and those higher-ranking military personnel who were personally responsible for the drone strike that killed that general. In other words, we avoided a whole war. War is the most raw, unfiltered version of what one person can do to another person. This war has lasted through 3 presidencies. That means 3 different people have been president while we were at war. Then again, war is something that has happened since the beginning of civilizations, and unfortunately, it is something that will happen long and after we are gone and dead. Who knows, maybe we will even have another war within our lifetimes, because it has already happened once.